Hi everybody. We're going to try to hit another video today. I'm going to try to do a couple ahead. Not to say that I don't think about you every day, but I've kind of been having a rough time, so I want to make sure that I have some videos ahead of time, so that just in case I can't do a video, I will have some already made. So today is going to be a fun day together. I'm in one of my favorite places to study God's Word. I'm in the camper. It's very quiet. There's nobody here. And so I'm just enjoying time with the Lord. Today we are going to do an I am statement that's a little hard to really grab the whole concept of it, because it's not an earthly kind of thinking. It's a heavenly kind of thinking. God has a different understanding of space and time. You know, the Bible talks about how, 1,000 years is like a day to him. It talks about, the way that he is so far above us, that he is able to see everything at the same time. So his spatial definitions are different than ours. And so today's I am is going to include both a literal message and from God's higher level message. And so we're just going to try to push our way through it and see how well we do. As you know, we've been looking to see who God says I am, who God says you are, who God says we are as his people. And today we're going to discover that he says we are earth dwellers. Now that may sound so silly, but it is important that we understand who, what, and how God calls us to be something. And it's very clear in Scripture that he has called us to live a human, natural life on this planet he created. And that's what we're going to look at. That we, no matter how much we love Jesus and no matter how much we are assured we have a home in heaven with him, we still have to get through this obstacle of being mandated to live on this planet, to live out an earthly life in the best way we can. So we can't always be heaven-minded because he has great purposes for us to be in the earth, on the earth, with him. So I'm really super excited. Jesus, just help us get through this. Okay, so the I am statement is I am an earth dweller. And your work that you have, that I've prepared for you today, if you look on Facebook, go to Jot and Tittle, you will have a whole different set of verses to look up, because this is a wide concept, Old Testament to New Testament, and it kind of all flows and fits in together, but it's hard when you first get started trying to see how the stitches form a beautiful picture. Okay? We are going to hopefully cover 3 verses as we do our studying right now, and we're going to open up and we're going to start with 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And we are going to look at verses 40 through 49. Okay, so we'll try to explain them as we go, but let's do a cold read first. There are also heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heavenly is one, and the glory of the earthly is another. There is one glory of the sun, S-U-N, so the bright star in the sky, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars, for stars differ from star in glory. Okay, this is huge. So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown a perishable body. It is raised an imperishable body. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. If there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body. So also it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living soul, and the last Adam became a life-giving spirit. However, the spiritual is not first, but the natural, then the spiritual. The first man is from the earth, earthly. The second man is from heaven. As is the earthly, so also are those who are earthly. And as in the heavenly, so also are those who are heavenly. And just as we have borne the image of the earthy, we shall also bear the image of the heavenly. Okay. How many of you had no clue that these verses existed in the Bible? 1 Corinthians is a very popular book. 1 Corinthians is preached a lot on the pulpit, from the pulpit, but somehow we always skip over this section from 40 to 49. In fact, if you look at my Bible, I don't have much writing or notes there at all, because it just kind of goes over your head, so you just kind of let it go. Well, today we are not going to let it go over our head. We're going to try to look at it and see what God is trying to say to us, who he is saying we need to be. So we're going to kind of just dig into it a little bit. We know that in Genesis, God created the earth. He created man and woman. And at that time, he made it so that man would live forever. Although man was made on earth, he was made to be perfect because there was no sin. When sin came, all of a sudden there became this principle of death. And not just death, but also decay. As you look through the Old Testament, you'll see ridiculous ages that people lived. 900 years, 700 years, 400 years. You know, it is crazy when you read it. But again, you either accept the Bible or you don't. You don't get to take a piece out and say, oh, no, that's silly, and still get to keep the part that Jesus died for you. It's either all or nothing. The Bible is either true or it's not true. But we can't just take out salvation and throw the rest away. So you have to come to the idea of whether or not you believe that the Bible actually was telling you the truth about the ages of the people. But then you come to a part where after the world got really ugly and man got really ugly, God said, no more long lives. I'm going to start tapering off the span of life that a man leads. And he said specifically, I'm going to dwindle it down to about 120. I don't want people to live past 120. And so that's a hard concept to have to face, but we need to understand why. Why? Yes, we were meant to be eternal. Without sin, there would have been no disease, no decay, none of the things that we see on the earth. And so for those first several, 1,000 years, there was this delay in how quickly people died, because the body, the sin didn't one day corrupt the entire earth. Sin began its state of corruption of the earth. So the earth is decaying. People are decaying. Disease. There's just so much. But we need to see the stark difference between what God had planned for our heavenly bodies, and that it is distinctly different than what plans he made for our earthly bodies. And he makes that very clear. He makes it clear in this portion in 1 Corinthians. He is saying there is one body that's heavenly and there's one body that's natural, and they don't swap. I love this one part where it says, there are heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heavenly is one, and the glory of the earthly is another. See, we like to put all of the bad stuff on the earthly body and say, oh, look at it, corrupts, it dies. But God in this verse is saying, nobody can deny that your heavenly body is going to be glorious. But he doesn't want us to miss the second half of that. But our physical body also has a glory that's all its own. And God is the one who distributes that glory. And he distributes it when we allow him to use our life to bring his glory. Then our life reflects glory. So don't get all hung up that, yeah, I can't wait till I get to heaven. Yeah, that's a great mindset. But keep yourself busy doing what he needs you to do in your earthly body, because he has plans for that as well. I love that he says, I think this is just so cool. So also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown a perishable body. It is raised an imperishable body. So God, he's re-clarifying this whole idea of why Jesus had to rise from the dead. Not just for salvation purposes, but also to teach us this concept of what it means to go from a physical body to a glorious body. That even Jesus left his place in heaven to become an earth dweller by God's design. And the glory of his earth body was great. And that is because he mentions over and over and over, I do everything that the Father says. So Jesus' obedience in his earthly body was astounding. Astounding. He led an earthly life. And it was so cool because the resurrection showed that there is a time for the physical body to be done. It's perishable. But it says then the resurrection after the perishable body will become a body that is imperishable, which means a lot. It means our physical form is going to change. I don't know how. The Bible says that we'll recognize each other, but we won't be male or female. I don't have the answers to that. I don't know. But we do know that something will change because our body then becomes imperishable. So this concept of an earth dweller is not a sidebar. It's not oh, well, now they sinned. Well, gotta wait around for everybody to die. No. We've learned too much about how purposely we were created. We've learned too much about how intended we are to think by any chance that God is sitting around waiting for us to die because he doesn't know what to do with our earthly body. No. Our earthly body is precious to him, and it is precious on this earth because we have his image. I love how it said, not only do we have his heavenly image, but we even have his earthly image. And so that can't be wasted. That's purposeful. Let's look a little bit closer at some of these verses in here. He talks about that there was a first man, Adam, and then there's a last Adam. And again, he's going through this process of helping us understand Adam was made out of dirt. He was perfect, but he was made out of dirt. And he was made to live on this earth. That was before sin. Sin did not set the tone or the stage for us to fall to earth. No. Satan fell, but we didn't. We were destined. We were created. We were designed to be on the earth. And that's the first Adam. Jesus is considered the second Adam. And the reason is because he was able to go outside the limits of our earthly body. And he was the example of what a heavenly body can be like. I wish I would have been there at the day of transfiguration when his disciples, just a couple of them, went with him to the mountain and they beheld him in his glory. I can't even fathom that. I don't think we have it in our brain to be able to understand that. And then he ascended to his throne after he was resurrected. He ascended to God in front of witnesses. Again, his disciples. And I'm telling you what, I can't even fathom what that was like to see him in his heavenly body. And it is something to be excited about. I can tell you, I will be very happy to get rid of this body. This body has done me well, but it's very broken. But I'm not ready to give up my mission here on earth until it's time. So no matter how broken our bodies may be, we still have purpose on this earth. All right. I think that we've done a good job of kind of tearing this apart. There's so much more in there, but I want to get to the other scriptures. So if you want to do more time in this section, please do. And look up any words that you don't understand. And you might find it fun to look it up in a couple different translations to see if it gives you a broader picture. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to skip forward, and we're going to look at 3 more passages to help us kind of put this in perspective. Okay, so let's go to Psalms 37. It's not a long passage. It just has something in there that's really important for us to understand. And Psalm 37, and we're going to look at verse 3. You can look at the whole chapter, but we're just going to look at verse 3 for this minute. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. Now, there's a couple words in here that we have learned before, and again, we learned them back in Genesis. When all of creation was done, sorry, that's my wind chime. When all of creation was finished, God gave them instructions. And he said to cultivate the earth, to dwell on the earth, have dominion over the earth. He gave them a lot of beautiful words, that their life on the earth was to be purposeful and full of a lot of adventure, a lot of work, a lot of intention, a lot of purpose. So when we look at this, I can see some of those words. And let's look at them. It says, dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. That's a very, very, very familiar, almost quotable Genesis verse. Only they weren't asked to cultivate faithfulness. They were asked to cultivate the earth. Now, what I love about this verse is while we're still living, now obviously David knew about the whole sin with Adam and Eve. He knew. In several places in the Bible, you can see where it shows who wrote the Bible and who they handed it off to. And maybe that can be that's an adventure. That is an adventure. We might want to do that sometime, is go through the history of how the Bible, that would be fun. Okay, well, we'll talk about that another time. But at the time that he says, dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness, that is a direct earthly reference. When it says dwell in the land, it literally means live in it, inhabit it, stay there and walk around it, be on the earth, which is exactly what God had told Adam and Eve. Get connected on earth. Get connected with the earth. So then we see he uses this cool word, and cultivate faithfulness. You see, David knew that sin had entered the world and that he was one of its biggest sinners, just like me and you. But there was still a purpose on this earth. And David talked about cultivating faithfulness. Now, that can mean a bunch of different things, but let's try to look at it and say, what does it mean to cultivate faithfulness? We know cultivate is a planting word. It's a work word. It means to toil and to grow and to put work in order to get work out. So it's a very active work word that insinuates a very intense level of connection. And so for us to be told to cultivate faithfulness, God is asking us to become more and more and more and more and more faithful as we walk on this earth. He says here, we are to walk on this earth, live, dwell on the earth. But you need to cultivate faithfulness. Sin is in this world. And so those of us who have been called by God, we still are called to this earth to work. But what we have to do is be more mindful that we are cultivating faithfulness on this earth. We are becoming more and more and more faithful to God as we continue to live out our earthly life. What a cool knowledge. Just this overwhelming, I never thought about cultivating faithfulness while I'm on this earth. So again, we see from the beginning this sow and reap. It's a beautiful formula. And we have to look at the beginning of verse 3. I didn't mean to skip over it so quickly. Trust in the Lord and do good. You know, what does that mean in the picture of dwelling on this earth? I can't see heaven. I can't see God. He does tell us that we can see glimpses of him in nature, and I've seen a couple of glimpses. But in all reality, we have to face the fact that we serve an invisible God. There's no way around it. There's not a religion that exists that doesn't have some kind of invisible faith included in it. But being a Christ follower, we believe in an invisible God. So just living on this earth, separated from him, he's in heaven. He stopped walking in the he stopped walking in the cool of the day with Adam and Eve when sin came. It was a barrier. And so we don't get to just go, I would love to take a walk with God. Him to point out every beautiful thing. Name it. Tell me its name. Tell me what it does. Tell me all about it. But there is a separation in the chasm between heaven and earth. And I hate to break the news, but we can't see him. So this element of while we're on this earth, not being able to see him, our entire relationship is based on trust. I have to trust that this invisible God is real. I have to trust that. If I'm going to be a Christ follower, then I have to come to the point where I trust what God says without seeing him come to earth. Now, I will get to behold him, and it's going to be a glorious day. And as a Christ follower, so will you. But until then, we just have to trust blindly that he is who he says he is, and that he has the plans that he says he has. And it says, not only trust the Lord as we dwell on this earth, but do good. There's a Christian song out that has really cool words. It's what does it say? I don't want to leave a legacy. I get what he is saying, and I think that him and I are probably saying the same thing. But I have always said I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave behind an image of Jesus that nobody will ever forget. I want to do good on this earth because he gave us this earth. He didn't just say when sin entered, okay, guess I'm starting over. No. He already had a plan for us on this earth, and he has every intention of us keeping that plan. And to think that I get to spend the rest of my life doing good. Like Corinthians said, of showing glory, of trust. What better reason to live on this earth? Now we're going to cover 2 verses in Job. And it's the end of 13 and the beginning of 14. And it is Job actually conversing. It's not one of his friends that is talking in these 2 references. It's Job. And it's because Job is faced with a reality that was really hard for him. It was a really hard reality. And Satan had asked God, please let me take Job in this physical world to the absolute limit and see if he still is able to trust you and do good. So we know that this actually happened, but what we're looking at today is Job didn't have pre-warning. We get to read the beginning of the book of Job, where we're eavesdropping on a conversation that God and the devil had about, hey, your little earth dweller down there, he's got a good life. He's only trusting you and doing good because you've given him everything. He has health, he has big family, he's got money, he's got wisdom. His earthly life is great. What about if I put some hindrance in his earthly life? What about if I make his earthly life really hard and really miserable? You think he's still going to do good on this earth? You think he's still going to trust you? And you know what God said? Yeah, I do. Go ahead and try. But I've got him. And so Job didn't have that pre-warning. He didn't know that God had told the devil, yeah, sure, because I know that man. I know him. I know his earthly body, and I know his faith in me. So Job was totally taken aback. He had no idea of this previous conversation. So this is some of the sentences that we get to see that hit him really hard. We're going to look at Job chapter 13, verse 28, and then we're going to go right into chapter 14, verses 1 through 6. While I am decaying like a rotten thing, like a garment that is moth-eaten. I want you to hear. Let me read it to you again and let that hit you in the face like a brick wall. While I am decaying like a rotten thing, like a garment that is moth-eaten. He was faced with the reality that his earthly body, his life on earth, really was going to be hard. For the first time, he experienced the reality that his body was rotting, that he was diseased. He was stricken in his body. Now, just a cool tidbit that you might want to know, Job historically is placed chronologically in the book of Genesis. So as you read Genesis, there's a pause for when Job lived. And it was sometime before the ark, because, before Noah, because Job talks about being able to see dinosaurs and large creatures that later on we didn't get to have. So he is being just slammed in the face, because he would have been one of the people that lived a long time, because he was way back in those beginning generation. But then let's look at 14 and see what it said. Man who is born of woman is short-lived and full of turmoil. Like a flower he comes forth and withers. He also flees like a shadow and does not remain. Thou also dost open mine eyes on him, and bring him into judgment with thyself. Who can make the clean out of the unclean? No one. Since his days are determined, the number of his months is with thee, and his limits you have set so that he cannot pass. Turn your gaze from him that he may rest, until he fulfills his day like a hired man. That is like a private look into Job's pain. My daughter has suffered a lot in her life, but she has developed an amazing talent for prose and poetry. Her pain is what she talks about. It's the only place that I've ever actually been able to see her talk about her pain, is in the way that she can write about it. And so it's very similar to this. And we see in these first couple verses here that it is hitting Job smack in the face that he is an earthly man, and that all the things that happen in this earth are going to happen to him. And so far, he lived a charmed life. And so the awakening that his life on earth wasn't going to be all, bed of roses. And you're going to look in your work today and you're going to find just example after example in the Bible of this reality, of the frailty of our life here on earth, that one minute it's here, the next minute it's gone. So in the big, huge scope of things, our life on earth is very short when you put it at the backdrop of eternity. Yeah. But it may be short, and it may be rough, and it may be painful, and it may be ununderstanding, but it is still purposeful. And I want you to look at verse 6. It's a capital, so we know he's asking God. Turn your gaze from him. That's not a capital, so that's Job. So he's saying, God, he's saying, turn your gaze from me. Give me a minute to rest. Give me a minute to catch my breath. Give me a minute, please. he says, I love this, until he, small letter, fulfills his, small letter, until he fulfills his day like a hired man. That may not sound like a good ending to that, but I'm going to tell you that is exactly what we are asked to do in Psalms when it said trust. Trust me and do good. Job was hit with a very serious reality that he was human. And hit with that reality so hard, he said, God, can you just give me a minute? Let me catch my breath so that I can finish what you want me to do. So that I can finish being the man that you have given a job to do. That's what hired man means. He recognized that God had given him a job to do, and whatever condition his body was in, he wanted to finish that job for God. And he said, just let me breathe for just a minute. Let me catch my breath for just a minute so that I can focus on finishing the job that you have for me on this earth. What a powerful message for God to say, I am an earth dweller. What powerful plans he has for us to cultivate faithfulness, to do good, to trust him, and to complete the job that he's asked us to do. Now, I will admit to you that pales in comparison to thinking about what heaven will be like. But just because we know we will spend eternity with him, it does not mean we get to forfeit what our life on earth is supposed to accomplish. I will see you guys tomorrow.